What is up, everybody? My name is Jeremy, and welcome to the channel. House of the Dragon Episode 1 is in the books, and man, what a good start it was. It truly feels like we're back in the world of Westeros in full swing, and I could not be more pumped about that. The episode was really impressive, I thought. Now, I've only seen the episode once so far, so this is only going to be my preliminary first thoughts, but be on the lookout for some light spoilers ahead, as I am going to get into some kind of details about the episode. But there will be a much more in-depth review and discussion later on, so definitely be on the lookout for that as well. The episode starts off with the Council of 101 AC, in which the Lords of Westeros are gathered at Harrenhal to decide who is going to succeed Jaehaerys I, as he's getting a little bit older and you can tell that his health is beginning to fail. And just like in the books, it comes down to two candidates. Rhaenys, the Queen Who Never Was, and Viserys the First Targaryen. And ultimately, they end up going with Viserys, as he is the oldest male heir in the line. I was hoping that that was going to be a cold open, and then we were going to go right into the title sequence of the show that was so famous for Game of Thrones. But we didn't get that, unfortunately. It just went right into the episode, which I feel was a little bit of a misfire. The opening title sequence in Game of Thrones was so iconic, and it was actually very helpful as well, because it really gave people that didn't read the books a sense of where everything was in the world with the map overview. It was just really helpful. So I was really looking forward to getting a new and kind of updated version of the title sequence for House of the Dragon, but unfortunately, we didn't get that in this episode. After the Council of 101 AC, it goes straight into the action, where we meet a young Rhaenyra who has just returned from a ride on Syrax. And I gotta say, the dragons look 100 times better here than they did on Game of Thrones. The colors, the design, everything. It's much more vibrant, much more distinguishable, and just all around better than they were on Game of Thrones, where they kind of looked like carbon copies of each other on the original series with just a little bit of different color schemes. Here, there is no mistaking which dragon is which. You can really tell them apart, which is awesome. We then get our first look at Viserys' small council, and seeing that really took me back. Some of the best moments of Game of Thrones took place right there in some of those small council meetings. You know, the wit between Tyrion and Cersei and Tywin and Varys and Littlefinger. All of that stuff was really intriguing, so it definitely looks like we're going to be getting a lot of that in this series, so I'm really looking forward to that. We got our first look at the Rogue Prince himself next, Damon Targaryen, and it's such badass entrance. Damon is sitting there on the Iron Throne, and even the Kingsguard is like, you know, gods be good, what are you doing sitting up there? It's just drives home the fact that Damon really is the Rogue Prince. He marches to the beat of his own drum. He's a rule breaker. He does not listen to anyone, and I really think he's going to be a big fan favorite. Matt Smith really stood out in this episode. And so did Paddy Considine as Viserys. I thought he stood out as well. Between Matt Smith and Paddy, those two probably had the most strong performances as far as I'm concerned for this first episode. Every time they were on screen, they just had really good screen presence. They command your attention, and it was just very well done, I thought, for both of them. Good acting all around, I must say, on this first episode. There wasn't one performance that I was kind of looking at like, oh man, that actor kind of sucks. Everyone really brought their A game, I thought, and it was very well acted. We then got some very cool City Watch scenes with Damon and the Gold Cloaks. And Damon takes his Gold Cloaks and straight up regulates the streets of King's Landing. And anyone that was worried about House of the Dragon dumbing it down and not being as violent as Game of Thrones was, rest assured that is not the case here. House of the Dragon is going all out in terms of violence, gore, and things like that. You're definitely not going to be disappointed in that category. After seeing this first episode, I can only imagine what Blood and Cheese is going to look like. It's probably going to be absolutely brutal. We also had some pretty graphic scenes of Emma giving birth as well, and it really just kind of nails home how dangerous it was for women to give birth back in medieval times, especially if the baby was breech, which was the case here. It was just a very raw and emotional scene, both for Emma and Viserys as well. It was very tough to watch at some points, I would say. And while all of that is taking place, there's a really good contrast between Emma giving birth and the tourney that is going on outside. We have some really raw tournament scenes where guys are just getting their heads smashed in left and right, all the while Emma is on the birthing bed just screaming and kind of fighting for her life and her kid's life. It was a really good scene, and it was nice seeing the contrast between the two. And speaking of the tourney, it was really, really well done. It seemed to be sticking to the books very, very accurately from what I could tell. Damon's armor looked really, really well. All of the knights' armor looked really, really well. And the match between Damon and Criston Cole was insanely fun to watch as well. As it was going on, it definitely looked like Damon was the better fighter of the two, but Criston Cole was definitely the more focused of the two, I would say. Damon probably could have had that fight won, in my opinion, but he gets a little too cocky, similar to the Mountain and Oberyn. You know, Oberyn kind of takes his eyes off the Mountain, and next thing we know, boom, he's getting his teeth and his eyes freaking pushed in. And nothing so severe here, but Damon definitely could have won that fight if he wasn't so cocky and took his eyes off of his opponent. But I must say, it was a little bit of a cheap shot from Criston Cole, hitting Damon while his back was turned. So there is that. But what can I say? I am a Team Damon all the way, so I'm always going to be a little bit biased. After the tourney scene, it cuts to a funeral scene where we learn that both Queen Emma and the baby didn't make it, which is very unfortunate, but just like the books. We get some really nice scenes in High Valyrian between Damon and Rhaenyra, and it's just one of those moments where you can see the kind of human side of Damon, and that he's not all bad, he's not all evil, he does have humanity to him, and it's a really nice moment between him and Rhaenyra. Then Rhaenyra has Syrax light the funeral pyre, and I gotta say, it was really cool to hear Dracarys again, and everything else that we're hearing in High Valyrian. The scenes that we got in High Valyrian seemed even better than they were on Game of Thrones here. It just seems like the language was fleshed out a little bit more and just sounds more fluid. I'm really glad that we're going to be getting a lot of scenes in High Valyrian. I'm glad that language is here to stay. It's so badass. It fits perfectly with George's world, and they developed a really good pronunciation for it when they came up with the original High Valyrian language for Game of Thrones, so it's good to see that back. Then we get to the infamous Heir for a Day scene that was so famous in the books. Now, just like in the books and just like on the show, after Viserys' son passes away, Damon is heard in a brothel referring to Viserys' son as the heir for a day, as he lived for one day before he passed away. Then it cuts to another small council scene where Otto Hightower is talking to Viserys, and Otto just straight up snitches on Damon and tells him exactly what he heard, and there was other witnesses to it, and even goes so far as to tell him that he thinks Damon was celebrating Viserys' kid's death. And that was the kind of beginning of the falling out that we're going to see between Viserys and Damon. We then get a scene of Damon and Viserys in the throne room, and they're arguing back and forth where Viserys confronts Damon about what he said in the brothel, and Damon fires right back at him, telling, along the lines of, you've been king for more than 10 years and not once have you ever asked me to be your hand. And Viserys responds with, why would I do that? And Damon just straight up tells him, because I'm your brother, and the blood of the dragon runs thick, which was a really good line. I like that line a lot. But you can see the little bit of that rift starting to form between the brothers, Viserys and Damon. So Viserys orders Damon to go back to Runestone with his wife, his estranged wife, who he calls his bronze bitch. And Damon just really dislikes the Vale in general. He refers to the Vale earlier as all of the women being ugly and the men fuck sheep, and the sheep are even prettier than the women. And it's just, more of that wit from Damon that we have come to know and love in the books. Then it cuts to Damon with Caraxes and Lady Misery, and the two of them take off on Caraxes, and that's pretty much the last time we see Damon in this episode. But then it cuts to another very important scene, something that was a big revelation, I thought, and I think many other people thought as well. And that was Viserys talking to Rhaenyra about why Aegon the Conqueror actually invaded Westeros, and how it wasn't just because he wanted to invade a land that was rich and fertile, but he actually had a more specific reason for uniting the Seven Kingdoms, and that apparently he had a dream similar to Daenerys the Dreamer. Now, Daenerys the Dreamer is a famous Targaryen who foresaw the doom of Valyria in a dream, and because of which the Targaryens left Valyria and moved to the island of Dragonstone. Then, years later, when Aegon Targaryen is born, apparently he has a dream as well, and in the dream he foresees the end of man, the fall of man, or the long night that we know it to be. And it was just really interesting, and I feel like it definitely doesn't break canon either, because we know from an interview a few years ago that George also kind of dropped this exact hint that maybe Aegon invaded Westeros for more than just to, become a king, that maybe he foresaw the coming calamity from the White Walkers, and it looks like that's exactly the case here. I'm really looking forward to what House of the Dragon is going to be doing with dragon dreams and prophecies and things of that nature. One thing that Game of Thrones did kind of poorly, I thought, was they kind of dumbed down the magic a little bit in George's world, and it definitely doesn't look like House of the Dragon is going to be doing that, which is definitely another plus. Overall, it was a very fun episode, I thought. It was a really good introduction. We got to meet a lot of the good characters, and it wasn't just your standard exposition-type pilot episode, and that was one thing that Miguel Sapochnik even mentioned earlier on before the show aired. He wanted to film a show that wasn't just all exposition and setup, and that actually told a coherent story throughout, and I feel like this pilot definitely achieved that. It was really fun to watch. I had a really great time getting back into the world of Westeros, doing these videos, everything. It just feels like Westeros and A Song of Ice and Fire is back and in full force. And everything really looks good. The sets, the costumes, the acting, the writing, all of it really, really came together well, and it's definitely a step above anything Game of Thrones did as far as I'm concerned, especially with the dragons. The dragons just look top-notch. They really look worlds better. And that is going to do it for us today. I want to thank everybody out there for watching. I cannot wait for episode 2. Bring it on already. We will be doing tons of content and tons of streams covering the show, and we will definitely be doing a more in-depth review and discussion of episode 1 later on, so definitely be on the lookout for that. Subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future uploads, and I want to thank everybody again, and as always, we will see you on the next one.
What?